More and more dairy farmers are adding Viking Red as the third breed to their crossbreeding program. In Australia and New Zealand, the Nordic red dairy cattle has become one of the fastest growing breeds. In the US, UK and other parts of the world, Viking Red is topping the charts. But what makes the Nordic red dairy cattle so profitable and appealing? Why has it become the secret ingredient in successful crossbreeding? In today's episode, we'll hear from a dairy farmer, Hayden Ferriman, who recently added Viking Red to his herd in New Zealand. We also have project manager for Viking Red, Jakob Voergaard, join us at the studio, alongside Jim Bruce, country manager for Australia and New Zealand. This is the BreedCast, produced by VikingGenetics. I'm your host, Louise Rønn Svane. Hello and welcome, Jakob and Jim, and thank you for joining us today.
Thank you very much for the possibility to be here.
Yeah, thank you. It's a pleasure to be with you.
So Jakob is here at the studio, and Jim, you're calling in from the southeast of Australia. So,
Correct.
Jakob, let's start with you. You're the product manager for Viking Red. What is happening with Viking Red around the world?
Right now, Viking Red have the home market, as we said, in Denmark, Sweden and Finland, the Nordic part of Europe. And there we have around 200,000 cows. It's declining a little bit in the home market as we see it now. One of the reasons is that in Denmark and Sweden, dairy farming get more and more efficiency, intensive. And when you have these barns with sand in, robots, everything is fully automatic, very high management of the herd, the Holstein is doing it fantastic. But if you look in other parts of the world, for example, UK, where they're working a little bit more with the low cost, that the cow have to take care of itself, handle itself, be a trouble-free, easygoing cow. There the red is doing well and growing those areas. And then especially in crossbreeding, where the red is the secret ingredients. It's just adding the health very much into the crossbreeding program and make it a very profitable way of management, the breeding for a dairy farmer.
Mm. And why are we seeing this change, this growth on the international market?
We mainly see it because farmers around the world, they want profitability, they want easy cows, it needs to be easy to manage. So by starting crossbreeding, they get easier calvings, they get better health, they get the same production, so they get a trouble-free, easygoing cow and more time to optimize their business when crossing.
And what are we looking at in terms of numbers on, doses being exported to the export market, etc.?
Around half of the doses we're selling is going for the export market. And if we're looking on the export market, roughly around 90% of the doses is probably going into crossbreeding there. And if we're looking around the world, we're having US as one big market, and then New Zealand is a very big market for us. Over the last years, it has been growing from nearly nothing to one of our most important and one of the biggest markets we have today. And we see a very big excitement about Viking Red in that area in the world.
And due to this exponential growth, that's actually one of the reasons why we invited you, Jim Bruce, to join us today. The Viking Red Cow is increasing in popularity in the South Pacific. Why are we seeing that?
Well, I think if we look at New Zealand in particular, starting in Australia, New Zealand is similar. We are dominated by the Holstein breed, about 80%. Maybe 10% of cows will be Jersey. And then in Australia, I know the numbers are around about 5% of the total population are red cows. Similar in New Zealand, but we see New Zealand probably leading the way in crossbreeding, and we are crossbreeding as well here quite a lot in Australia. And the red cow fits our climate really well, and it's of a significant size as a breed that there's enough material and enough selection pressure that we can really find dynamic genetics to include in our breeding programs, and particularly in those crossbreeding programs. And that's where a lot of the growth is in New Zealand.
And what makes the Viking Red Cow particularly suited for the climate? Because it's quite different, being in Northern Europe compared to the South Pacific.
that's a very good question. In our environment, we're more forage-based, more grazing systems, both in Australia and New Zealand. The robustness of the red cow and her ability to walk suits our management system very well. They'd have to travel large distances on a daily basis from pasture to milking, and so it's that robustness of the cow and maintaining high levels of production and fertility along at the same time.
And later in the show, we will hear from a New Zealand farmer, Hayden Ferriman, who we spoke to earlier this week. So we'll get to learn more about how he's started to include the Viking Red in his herd. Jakob, we do have a question from one of our listeners. This is from Ross in the UK. And he wrote us on Facebook. He would like to know, what are the qualities of Viking Red and what is its origin?
Viking Red is, a matter of fact, it's not a breed. It is a breeding program, and it's made by joint forces from RDM, the Danish red milk cattle in Denmark, SRB, their red breed in Sweden, and then the Finnish Aisha in Finland. They joined back for close to 12, 15 years ago, a joint breeding program, and worked together there. Before that, they also worked very much together, but then when they joined it, they made the Viking Red breeding program. And when we are working with that, we are not looking where the cows or the bulls are from. We're going for the best genetic, for the best suitable profile for the farmers around the world. So we are not looking at the countries, we are looking at the best genetic. And the best genetic, that is where the red is very strong. They are healthy, trouble-free, easygoing cows with a high percentage of solids in the milk that make them suitable, especially for the grazing system, where they do it very well.
And Jakob, how did you end up working with the Viking Red cow?
I grew up on a dairy farm. It was a Holstein farm, and I very early went into breeding. I was 10, 12. I took over the breeding on our farm. Talking with the breeding advisor, even it took a little bit time for the breeding advisor to accept that it was a 12-year-old kid he was discussing with, and not a grown-up farmer. So I worked very much with there. When I took to university, I very fast figured out that it was breeding I was working with, and then I went out as advisor. And at that time, I never worked with the red cows. I worked with the Holsteins, but I got half of the herd was red and half of them was Holstein, and there I really figured out the benefit of the red cow. I very much like the philosophy that you're making a cow that is a self-going cow. It's taking care of itself. You make a cow where you cut down on the cost. You're working on the animal welfare to make more healthy animals, to make more time for yourself. And then, of course, you still have a good production. Not a top production, but in the economy, it's the same as the other breed. You just get it in a different way. Lower cost, and then also a bit of lower production. And the most important thing, lower input for the farmer, so you have more time on the couch, hopefully. Or to optimize your business, depending on what you would like to do.
Depending on your priorities, yeah. Jim, there is a tradition in Australia and in New Zealand. It's not new to cross. In fact, it's been going on for years and decades, especially between Holstein and Jersey. From your perspective, why even add a third breed? Why are farmers doing that down under?
Well, I think there's a couple of reasons for that. And the first and foremost is all crossbreeding research will show you that the heterosis is improved with the addition of a third genotype coming into the program. But why Viking Red is the third genotype is you need to take you need to try to combine complementary strengths from each of the genotypes that you bring into a crossbreeding program, and it is that robustness, the strong production. You know, in these crossbreeding programs, we look to Holstein for production. We look to the Reds to bolster fertility, to bolster efficiency, and as Jakob has said, you know, they walk, they handle grazing systems very, very well. And these are things that they do better than the other breeds that are in those crossbreeding programs. So it gets the breeder the opportunity to combine the best of many worlds.
And actually earlier this week, we spoke with Hayden Ferriman. He's a dairy farmer on the South Island of New Zealand. He milks 700 cows, and he used to do a cross between Holstein and Jersey, more traditional two-way cross. And about 3 years ago, he added Viking Red to his herd. Let's hear what Hayden has to say about Viking Red.
So I came across Viking Red when I was actually in Denmark working. My wife, Lena, is from Skive, and so I spent a couple of years living and farming in Denmark near Silkeborg, near Kellop, and was farming Viking Friesians, but had the opportunity to visit some Viking Red herds and also some Viking Jersey herds. So the main traits that really caught my attention with the Viking Red breed in particular was just their overall health traits. They, from what I was told by the farmers that were running those cows, was that they were very fertile animals, had great feet and legs, which is very important for us here in New Zealand with our cows doing a lot of walking, but also very good in terms of somatic cell count and mastitis, which is also important to us. The other parts of it too were just the ease of management of the animal of the Viking Reds, in terms of their adaptability to milking and overall temperament. So yeah, they basically ticked all the boxes that I was looking for, really. So we are currently calving our first Viking Red bred heifers as we speak, and so that's really exciting. We're seeing the fruits of our work that we've put in over the last few seasons, and yeah, it is very early days, but we're really pleased with the results that we're seeing so far. The Viking Red first crossed heifers are calving down nice and easily, and coming into their milk really well with very little issues in regards to mastitis or calving difficulty. And one thing that's really impressed me and also my staff has been their adaptability to milking. We milk our herd of 700 cows through a 60 bale carousel rotary dairy shed, and so there's a little bit of learning that has to go in for the cows in terms of how they enter and exit the shed and adapt to the milking routine. And the Viking girls have taken to it like old pros. They're a real pleasure to deal with. Of our 700 cow herd, we chose just to inseminate our pure Friesian cows with the Viking Red semen, and so we've ended up with about 80 first cross New Zealand Friesian Viking Red heifers calving this year, and that is the intention with our breeding plan, is to carry on with that. So any straight Friesian animals will be bred to the Viking Red bulls, and then their resulting offspring will then be mated to Viking Jersey bulls as well, to continue on the three-way cross.
And thanks to Hayden for coming on the show. And if our listeners out there, if you want to learn more about crossbreeding, there's a separate podcast on that, actually featuring you as well, Jakob. One of our BreedCast episodes where we focus particularly on crossbreeding. Thanks for joining the BreedCast today. We've looked at why the Viking Red Cow has become so popular around the world, and we've heard from dairy farmer Hayden Ferriman in New Zealand and how the breed has added value as a third breed in his crossbreeding program. If you'd like to learn more, please visit the Viking Red page. I want to thank our guests, Jakob, Lykke, Voergaard and Jim Bruce, for sharing your knowledge and insights with us. And thank you everyone out there for listening. If you have an idea or a topic in mind you'd like to focus on in the BreedCast, please visit thebreedcast.com or reach out to us via the Facebook page like Ross from the UK did, We always love to hear from you. My name is Louise Rønn Svane. Please join me for the next BreedCast episode on the latest trends in sustainable cattle breeding.